Welcome to I Wish You Could Hear This, where we explore great stories and simple proven steps to help you thrive in life, faith, and relationships.
In our research, we've heard hundreds of hope-filled strategies for marriage, parenting, leadership, and life that are grounded in science and consistent with biblical truth. And now you can hear them too.
I'm Shaunti Feldhahn.
And I'm Jeff Feldhahn.
For decades, it has been clear that boys and men are struggling in our culture. In earlier years, we understandably focused on creating opportunities for girls and women. But the pendulum has swung so far that girls now have advantages in almost every arena of life. Today, it is the boys and men who often need encouragement. But thankfully, there are things any of us can do to care for men and boys in our personal lives and make a difference in our culture. That is what we will be talking about on this episode of I Wish You Could Hear This.
I am so glad that we're tackling this subject. This is an issue that's been building for so many years across education, work, mental health, and relationships. And it's impacted so many men. And I don't know. I mean, you and I have spent a fair bit of time with young people.
Yes.
A lot of young men, young women. And I got to tell you, the young women feel very purpose-driven, feel very, at least the ones that we're engaging with. And some of the young men are trying, but it feels like I just don't know what to do, where to go.
It feels like there's more hopefulness and movement in general among young women than young men as a whole.
You said it perfectly.
Yeah. It's interesting going all the way back. Well, it's only 16 years ago, but I still remember when there was this essay that was really groundbreaking at the time that Hannah Rosin wrote in The Atlantic. It was 2010. We'll put a link to the original article in the show notes. And she wrote this essay called The End of Men, and basically surfaced and said in this mainstream publication what parents and teachers had been noticing for years, but it really wasn't kind of politically correct to say that boys and men were falling behind. And maybe we need to focus on helping them, not just girls or women. And there was this uproar. There were so many people in the sort of broader culture who were upset with her.
Yeah, no, she had her finger on something early on. I mean, there's now been a number of books. I think of the Richard Reeves book on boys and men, which, a hugely popular book. But she was right. And could you give us some stats on this stuff so that we're all kind of on the same page on what we're talking about here?
Yeah, we have a lot of different stats that we could get to, and we'll probably just get to some of them.
And that makes your heart so happy.
It does. Well, and I know that our listeners, our followers appreciate that as well, that this isn't just a matter of opinion. But here's a few statistics. Now, these aren't even the most egregious statistics. These are all just mainstream things that probably everybody does need to know. So we'll put links, by the way, in the show notes so you can look at these stats for yourself. So you're not just taking our word for it. So most important, I think, that we start with is education, some stats on education. At all levels of education, all the way from small, elementary school kids, all the way up through college, the end of a college degree, girls consistently are outperforming boys in some of the basic things. So, for example, basic reading skills. The government has, for years and years, done statistics on reading because it is one of the leading indicators of how a student is going to do for the rest of their life, really. And so I looked at the numbers. And the way they do it is they say 4th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade reading levels. And at all levels, girls are outperforming boys in basic reading skills, and the gap gets worse as a student gets older. By the time that a student gets to senior year, the gap between girls and boys is almost 50% worse than it was in the 4th grade. Now, some of this, just in general, this is not just reading, it's all sorts of things. is because of how the education system over the last 50, 60, 70 years has really become designed for the way girls learn rather than the way boys learn, which is sit still and listen.
Yeah. Now I mean, honestly, I'm thinking back to when I was in elementary school and junior high. I did well in school.
Yeah. This is
Um,
not saying that every boy does
no,
bad, not
but
at all.
as I think of it, I was actually able to sit still and listen,
Yeah.
and it didn't feel challenging to me. But for a lot of guys, I mean, that just wasn't the case, and I just thought that they were just rowdy or they couldn't control
And
themselves.
some of them probably that's
Some
accurate.
probably. I could name a few, but I won't. But nevertheless, I mean, the
Yeah.
system was kind of designed for that.
For
And
people
it's
like you. Yeah.
yeah, and it's almost understandable in one way in that if you've got a teacher and back in the day we had 30 kids in a class, you really can't accommodate lots of different learning
Right,
styles.
exactly. Like you wish you could.
Wish you
But
could.
can we be realistic here?
Yep.
Now, here's the thing, interestingly, and this is one of the things that we're going to talk about in a few minutes is, parents kind of stepping in and advocating for boy learning styles as well as girl learning styles. But there are ways, even in today's classroom, where you do have to be realistic about kind of how do you educate kids at scale. Because obviously the more boy-friendly, boy brain-friendly way of educating would probably be hands-on apprenticeship type stuff.
Yep.
That's not as scalable. That's 1-to-1 or
Mhm.
1-to-2 or 1-to-3. That's not 1-to-30, right? But I heard this great example not that long ago. I was talking with another woman about this, and she had daughters, but she was talking about how she loved in elementary school. One of her daughter's teachers was so attuned to what boys needed. She said she pretty quickly diagnosed which boys were kind of the wiggly ones. This is elementary school. And so she said, okay, this is developmentally appropriate, right? These boys need a little more activity. And so she put them in the back of the room so they wouldn't disturb others, like their desks were in the back. And she drew in tape around their desk a giant circle and said, each boy, you can get up and you can walk around the desk, you can stand, you can stretch, whatever, just
Stay in the circle.
stay in the circle and then sit back down when you're able. And here's what she may have known or may not have known. But the brain, the way the brain is designed, and this is, I think, the way God designed us. This is especially an issue for guys, not as much for girls, but it is for both, is that when the brain starts to check out, which it would do at a lower level than for boys than for girls in today's educational environment. When the brain starts to check out, attention starts to drift, the brain automatically starts to re-engage the physical movement centers and say, hey, you need to move and wiggle in order to make your brain start listening again. And so for a boy who is sitting still and listening, when his brain, he's like, my brain is checking out at some point. I'm not attending. I don't understand what the teacher is saying. So he subconsciously, biologically, his brain tells him to move and to wiggle to re-engage his learning style.
I think, as I'm listening to this, that's all super fascinating to me. And, it may not be entirely practical in some smaller settings or whatever where you could do that. I love what that teacher did. But I think for me, thinking back as a young boy, if I had someone who said, look, here's kind of the difference between the boy brain and the girl brain.
You're designed this way. This
You're
is okay.
designed this
Yeah.
way, and here's what we're going
Interesting.
to do about it. Otherwise, if you're evaluating yourself as a young boy and going, these other students can do this and I can't, therefore I must be defective.
Yeah.
There must be something wrong with me. And that thought gets lodged in a little guy's brain
Yeah.
about himself and thinks he's just different. He's not up to speed with others. Whereas if that teacher can say, look, you guys are just different and you need a little bit of different activity than someone else does, but they're both okay.
And they're both good and
Yeah.
designed this way.
Yeah, that's right. And so,
If a boy can't wiggle,
right.
I mean, this is the concern, right?
Yeah.
What happens when a young, let's just say that you're a fourth grade boy,
Yep.
okay?
Yep.
And you feel yourself checking out, and your teacher has gotten on you several times
Yep.
about just you're disruptive, even if all he's doing is moving in his seat.
Yep.
What happens
In the boy's heart and mind?
in the boy's heart and mind when he like says, "Okay, I can't do that."
He's embarrassed and he feels stupid.
Okay.
And, if you feel stupid, you're more likely to check out and focus on what otherwise makes you feel competent and alive.
Wow.
And so it could be, I don't know. It could be sports. It could be, learning, knowing all the things about the, batting averages of most of the starting outfielders, in the National League, whatever it is.
Whatever it is, I
And
feel good there. I feel smart
You
there.
feel capable.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all wanting to feel.
Yeah.
We want to feel like we matter. We're good enough. We can do it. And I'm saying this from a guy's perspective. I'm assuming that it's similar for young girls.
Well, I think our statistics, our data found that, feeling competent and adequate is far more important emotionally to men, even though, of course, it's important to girls and to
Right.
women. And it's far more damaging if they feel incompetent and inadequate
and if you
emotionally.
do, you have the tendency, I'm going to say this from my own personal experience, to just check out of what you feel,
Yeah.
incompetent on.
So suddenly we have these boys who I'm feeling stupid, like I can't understand what the teacher is saying, even though if maybe he was able to have a slightly different approach to learning, he would be just as smart as the girl
Right.
sitting in the next seat. And so he sort of says he thinks of himself as not being a good learner, and it starts becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm sorry, you were going
No,
to say?
I was going to say, so does this just end in grade school?
Well,
or
it obviously
middle school?
it keeps going because we saw the reading gap, for example,
Yeah.
getting worse as boys and girls transition into the end of high school. And not surprisingly, so more statistics, that gap translates to college. Now, one of the things that is to me really interesting is that it's gotten so starkly different that 44% of women go on to college. 40% of girls go on to college. Only 34%
Wow.
of boys go on to college. And so in college, there are far more women than men who are enrolled. I looked back at the numbers, and in 1970, it was about 40% women, 60% men. Okay, we were still in the, hey, we have to really encourage women. We've got to get women a few more advantages, right? So it was working. The pendulum was swinging. And so in 1978, we hit 50-50. It was exactly 50-50 in 1978. But it switched in 1979. That was the first year where there were more women than men in college. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it
Okay,
is.
1979. And it just got worse and worse and worse. So in 1989, which is the year I graduated from college, it was
Wow.
54. Sorry, you're making me feel old. Stop
It's
it.
the year I graduated too.
Well, yes,
I had a different track.
you
than
had a different
had.
track. You had the 7 years in the restaurant business before going to college track. Yes. But okay, so in 1989, when we both graduated, it was 54% women.
Wow.
46% men, and today it is almost 60% women, 40% men, almost the exact opposite of 1970. And we're still arguing over whether we should really be encouraging boys and men and whether there's a need for intervention.
Wow. Well, let's just stop there for a second. Not everyone's called to go to college.
Yeah.
Just full stop.
Of
Let's get that
course,
out
of
there.
course. There's plenty of people for whom that's just not what they're called to do.
That's
They're
right.
not interested, whatever. Yeah.
Yep. But the education gap has historically had huge implications.
Yep.
With a college degree, you tend to make more money and have more opportunities. At least that's how it's been historically in the past.
Yes.
This new age of AI,
We don't know.
we don't know what it is, because everything you read, you hear about it, is that it's first coming for the knowledge workers.
Right, which
So
is the
people,
college.
the
Right.
college educated.
So probably this is one thing that has been maybe an encouragement, and this is something that would help, I think, traditionally boys and men, is let's maybe try to put a little more emphasis on trades and
Right.
vocational training. So, AI is not going to replace an electrician or a plumber, right?
That's right.
The skilled trades are always going to be a thing.
I hesitate to say the word always in today's world, but it certainly feels more likely that it'll be always.
Until we get like crazy robots.
Crazy
yes,
robots.
okay. So here's some actual numbers. So male labor force participation amongst, like, if you set aside teenagers and you just look at men and women who are 20 years old and older, men's labor force participation declined almost 9% in the last 20 years. And that's compared to, for women, it did decline a bit, but it was only 3%. So in other words, men's participation in the workforce declined 3 times more than women. And that's just one. There's so many different statistics that we could say about, whether men felt like they were going somewhere versus women, et cetera.
Wow. And another related implication of all of this is that researchers have also found that a man with a college degree and more income opportunities is more marriageable.
Yeah.
So there's all these men who might be seen or see themselves as not quite at the highest tier as a potential marriage partner, even though they may be great, great guys.
This is a big deal. There's so many women who say, I just can't find a guy, who has a good income potential and whatever. And they might, but again, especially when you have that college gap, that really, guys can hold themselves back as well.
Well, I mean, it's the whole self-confidence thing.
Yeah.
And it feels like I just don't measure up. And guys, at least the guys that I know and the guy that's sitting next to you right now, that's an area that is ever present almost in their mind.
So we need to talk about, this impacts, we don't have time to get into all of it, but this impacts the gap between men and women, impacts mental health, emotional health, like all the
Relational
things.
health.
Relational health, like all the things. And what we want to talk about is encouraging. How do we move to encouraging boys and men in our culture? Because I think there are just, and the data shows there's too many people who have grown up kind of perceiving masculine traits as negative rather than as something to celebrate. I think men see themselves that way.
Well, when you get fed a pretty steady diet in things you read, things you see on television or in the movies, that some of the big problems are caused by men acting like men. And it really makes you think that there really
wrong
is
with
something
you, that you're
wrong with me.
defective.
Yeah,
as
for
opposed
sure.
to you're created this way by God for a good purpose.
Correct.
Just to go back to one of the issues, some of you will remember in 2018, the American Psychological Association did not exactly cover itself with glory. They put out guidelines. It was, I'm sure it was intended for a good purpose.
Okay.
But they put out guidelines on how counselors should work with boys and men. And unfortunately, the entire report, all the guidelines, was basically raising concerns about men's way of being and how things like achievement orientation and competition and risk taking could become tied to like being dominant and pulling yourself back emotionally or being aggressive or being violent or domestic abuse or whatever. Like, listen, all those things are important to call out, but that's a small percentage of boys and men. And there was nothing in that whole report really, other than a couple little comments here and there. Oh, this is not every man, but the whole report did almost nothing to say, hey, the way that these sort of traditionally masculine traits, that these are actually good qualities. These, yeah, they can go in the wrong direction, but, competition can drive excellence, right?
Absolutely.
Risk-taking can lead to a lot of innovation. It can lead to courage when courage is needed. That kind of achievement orientation, that can really benefit our society and our culture or a marriage or your workplace. Strength, hey, aggressiveness doesn't have to be bad if you're being protective of someone else. And so that was a really big uproar for a reason of saying, let's not pathologize men. And thankfully, there have been some studies, we'll put this stuff in the show notes, but it actually, Pew found that, more people had positive views of masculinity than had negative views, but certainly the perception among men is they're kind of walking around with this kind of cultural thing hanging over their head.
I mean, one of the things is, as researchers and writers, we get lots of books sent our way.
Yes.
Because someone wants us to read it, comment on it, perhaps on social media,
endorse it,
all of those sorts of things. We got one back a few years ago, which was from Nancy Pearcy.
Yes.
Very,
oh my
very.
Gosh.
I loved her stuff when she used to write with Chuck Golson.
Interesting.
Back
in the day.
Years ago. Yeah. So Nancy is one of those kind of intellectuals and just really a real solid thinker. And so she had a book that we received, and it was called The Toxic War on Masculinity. And I remember it was sitting on our kitchen island, and we had some neighbors over, and one of our neighbors was just stopped in his tracks.
I know, he like looked at the book, he was like, what?
And because he goes, I thought when I first read it, it was what I expected it to say, being the war on toxic masculinity.
Well, no, that's what
he thought.
He thought it, because that's what you hear about
what you
toxic
hear all the
masculinity.
Time. And so he said, wow, so this is the
toxic war on masculinity. Yes.
Interesting. Now, I don't know if he went out and picked up a copy of the book. He didn't.
Wouldn't surprise me,
yeah,
actually.
I think so.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that is something that, we have to be aware that thought is out there that,
Yeah. And if you are the parent, and so for those of you who are listening to this, because we really want to move to like, what do you do about this? And what's the way to encourage boys and men? And so one of the things, if you are a parent of a son, especially if you're a mom, and you may not necessarily see it from the inside, but keep an eye out. One of the things that we found in our research for parents only a number of years ago is this whole thing statistically that boys who are feeling kind of stupid, you have to catch that fairly early and talk to them about it so they don't internalize that when they're young, and so that they constantly can like switch that thought out of like, look, I may feel stupid, I'm not, like I have a different learning style, that's okay, I'm wired differently. Kind of that affirmation from the young age of a boy, I think that's just one example, but I think it's pretty important,
Yeah, for sure. So talk about the idea the implication that guys pull themselves or hold themselves back.
Yeah.
in settings.
So we just watched this little short film that I think is absolutely fascinating. It's called If We Were Ants.
And we're going to put the link in
The
the show
link in the
notes.
show
Yeah.
notes. Yes. Okay. So funny story, how we found out about this. So I'm literally I'm at a dermatologist appointment. So I'm at my dermatologist appointment, and the dermatologist, the PA, she's great. We've been working with her for years. And so we catch up on each other's kids or whatever. And she was telling me her daughter is up in New York and she's pursuing a college degree and she's pursuing acting opportunities in New York. And she was like, oh, these guys cast her as the female lead in this short film called If We Were Ants. And it went crazy viral, like 6 million views or whatever, like right away. And so I'm like, oh, I've got to look at this. And she said, well, it's interesting. You might find it fascinating. You might find it
She
interesting.
knew what you did.
Yes, because she knows what we do, right, with the research and the books. And she said her daughter had known these two guys who wrote the short film, who wrote the script. These guys had met in a Bible study, and had solicited their director of photography, I guess, from the Bible study or a different one. And they knew her daughter, and so cast her as the female lead. And, then the whole thing blew up and it went really viral. But she said, you'll find this interesting because the theme of this short film, and one of the reasons that it went so viral, is that it's showing play out in front of you the different feelings of opportunity that the girl maybe has than the boy has, and how he pulls back as a result of feeling maybe less than.
Yeah. Now, I hate when someone spoils a movie or a book for me.
Yes, you
so
do.
I'm gonna not do that. But I think we need to talk about this a little bit. And it's a short film. It's 24 minutes. It's
worth
well
watching.
worth your time.
Yeah, it's kind of
for
emotional,
24
actually.
It is.
Yeah.
I was surprised by how emotional it made me feel.
Really?
Oh no!
As a guy, especially.
As a
I
guy.
think.
So let me kind of set the scene, because I love how this short started. There's you focus in on a young man in a suit and a tie, and he wakes up in the middle of a wood, and he's confused and disoriented and lost. It's clear that he didn't know how he got there or how to get
Anywhere
somewhere
else.
else. Yeah, he just started to kind of wander. And so you see that scene for a little bit, and then the next time you see him, he's riding the subway day after day. He's got his headphones in,
yeah.
and he's listening to some music. And day after day, this same young woman comes and sits beside him.
Who's the daughter of our
Who's
dermatologist.
The daughter of our dermatologist. And she sits there and she's got a sketchbook and she sketches things. And, you see weeks pass in the timeline. And finally,
and he never says anything. You
never
can tell
says,
he wants to.
Yeah,
but he doesn't have the confidence.
He doesn't. So finally, she's the one who engages.
Classic.
The first time. And but he held himself back.
Yeah.
And that you see that through the remainder of the short, that uncertainty in what's he going to do with his life. She was very purposeful.
Yes, right.
She had a plan.
And she has there's a point where there's an opportunity that comes up. Yeah.
Correct. And it wasn't a downer of a movie, but
I thought it was,
there was some emotional
distressing in some way
with the struggle. But I think it was pretty telling on what these young men are encountering. And one of the things that
remembering that these two young men that met in this Bible study were the ones who wrote the thing, and one of them was the lead actor.
Correct. Yeah. So one of the things that struck me all the way through it was this young man who was the lead just appeared to be on his own. You didn't see any older men engaging in his life.
Yeah.
He was kind of just left to try and figure it out on his own. And you felt like he was overwhelmed. often. And so he would kind of he was by himself, and he would live in his dreams of hoping that in 5 years things were going to change, but not really having a plan or any guidance to work toward
Yeah.
that change.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. As I was watching it, again, you've heard us talk about this before. I think there is a huge opportunity for us the older generation, to impart what we've learned, hard fought lessons to younger people. I
Yeah.
think, they want to hear.
Oh,
And
for
if
sure.
you show
Absolutely.
yourself as willing to spend time with them, they'll engage. And you know what? Maybe you're not going to be talking to hundreds or thousands in some stadium event, but you can change the life of one young man or two or three or 10 by just engaging with them, listening to them, having coffee with them, and sharing what you've learned.
Invite a group of guys over to your house
For
every
sure.
Thursday night or every other Thursday night for dinner.
Yep.
I mean, we have a few friends who do that.
Yep.
And it sounds like it is one of the most rewarding things for all parties. The young men get to meet other young men who have the same desire for purpose and mentorship, and you get the ability to speak into their life.
And and I'm thinking of this one friend who does this. He has frustration along the way too, with some of them. Like, can you believe this guy is 27 and he's at the very basics?
Yeah.
He just is struggling with those, but he's got to start somewhere.
But then we have dinner with this man and his wife relatively regularly every few months, and sometimes we hear a year later,
Yep.
Oh, guess what happened with that
Yep.
27-year-old I was so frustrated by.
Yep.
And now he's got a girlfriend and he's moving forward, and he's moved out of his parents' basement.
Right.
And it all was because somebody took the time to encourage him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think
I just think that's just, anyway, one of the things, we don't really have time to get into the statistics, but one of the things that different studies have found is that one of the main mechanisms for encouraging boys or men is this kind of mentoring, and I think it goes back to that apprenticeship thing. It's just apprenticeship in life and emotions and relationships, not just, hey, here's how you become a bricklayer or whatever.
Well, I think back on, my own personal story, and some have heard this. I think we talked about it a little bit in our first episode. So I'll just briefly say, after high school, I didn't go to college. I was accepted at college, but I chose to go to work with my brothers in a restaurant that my parents had put their life savings in. I thought I'd do it only for, a few months and then re-engage with college for the winter term. So I'd just be a semester behind. That's what I thought. Restaurant didn't do so well, needed my free labor, and that few months turned into 7 years. And I thought, honestly, at 24 years old, my future was set. In that,
and there was no way to get out of that.
There was no way to get out of it. And there's plenty of folks who do make a living, and it's an honorable living, working in retail, working in a restaurant. It's hard. It's really hard. But there's plenty of folks who do that. It wasn't for me. And I also had the advantage of having a great father.
Yeah.
And other men, older men in my life through church, through, just different activities, and peers that said it's not over for you.
It's just encouragement.
It's just encouragement. And that's all I really needed. So you're 25 and you're going to start college.
Okay.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
And that's what happened. But you need that encouragement, and we can be that encouragement to that 21-year-old, to that 25-year-old, to that 35-year-old that's still trying to find his way.
Yep. And again, for our children, if you are a parent, if you are an educator, if you are a youth worker, if you are a youth pastor, a coach, like these, all of you have these opportunities to speak life into the boys who will then become the men and sort of instill the vision that the way God has made them is good. You're not defective.
Yep.
And to really push for example, a bit more of a way to honor how boys learn in our school system, for example. All of that, there's all these meta-analyses that have been done, tons and tons of research that show that just that kind of encouragement and involvement makes this massive change.
It's not a soapbox for me, but perhaps it's going in that direction.
Okay.
Our son-in-law. It's interesting
Yes.
to be able to say that.
Oh, that's the weirdest phrase.
it
We're
is.
still getting used to this. A month
Our
later.
son-in-law is working toward being an elementary school teacher
Or a middle school teacher.
middle
Yeah.
school. He loves working with kids.
I
And
think he's nuts to feel
Yeah.
most called to middle school,
Yeah.
but he really does, and he's
does.
good with that
he
age.
is good
Yes.
with it. And the thing is, a lot of men just don't see that necessarily as a viable career path. And
Yeah.
I think they should, not for the income or all of those sorts of things that are necessary, but for the impact
Yeah.
that they can have
Oh
on
my
lives.
gosh.
I was just talking with a friend just last week, and we were talking about stories of growing up as a kid, and I was talking about school, and I said, who was your teacher in 4th grade? Just making conversation. And she said, my very favorite person, my very favorite teacher was Mr. Robinson. He was my 4th grade teacher. He noticed me and said, basically, I could do whatever, and gave me that sense of well-being that I could thrive. And she said
Yeah.
I was painfully shy, and he noticed me. He knew my name, and I wasn't even in his class. And he said hi to me one day.
Well, I'm thinking about our son and his friends in
Yep.
high school where there was a male teacher
Yep.
that all of these guys would end up like eating lunch in his classroom
Yeah.
because
Just to be around him.
he had a free period,
Yep.
his work period, and he would work at his desk and just kind of be there.
Yep.
And he was also one of the coaches and whatever. But so if you're a guy who is like, you know what, maybe I don't know what my career field is going to be, like, okay, seriously consider the possibility, even if maybe you've had a career for a while, maybe you're in a different phase of life, you can switch to being somebody who pours into the life of young men. Just think about that, because the studies have found that it actually makes a pretty big
huge difference.
So I know that we're like running out of time, but can I just say for the record how grateful I am that this conversation that we're having is no longer taboo, and that people see the need for this, as opposed to in 2010 when Hannah Rosin got creamed
Yeah.
for talking about it. And I'm excited because I honestly think these little actions really can make a big difference.
I think absolutely. So here we are at the end, our takeaway that we want folks to remember.
What's our one thing?
Yeah, what would you say?
We always end with what's the one thing we want
we
people
always
to
spring
remember.
it on a guest. It's a little harder when you spring it on yourself, huh?
So I think here's one thing for me. I think we need to get into the habit with boys, especially. Now, this is for everybody, boys and girls. It matters for everybody, but especially emotionally for a boy, that we have to get used to calling out what they're doing well, not just what they're doing wrong. Like kind of the stop wiggling, sit still and listen, being a silly example, but it's a real example. And instead call out, man, I was so proud of you for protecting that kid on the playground when that one other kid was bullying them. Like, I'm really proud of you for that. if a boy hears you're good and you're needed and you are operating in the way that God has designed you, I think that that vision can change a lot. So that would be mine.
That's yours. Wow, that's good. Mine is, come on, guys, men of a certain age like myself, we have a role still to play, and let's do this. We can invest some of our time. If we're empty nesters, we've got more time than what we
Did
used
before.
to have.
Yep.
And golf, sure, it's fun, but I think really spend more time thinking about how you can impart what you've learned through life.
And I want to say thank you to the men out there that are
That
already
doing
doing
it,
that,
sure.
because there are
For
plenty.
sure, absolutely are. But that would be my takeaway. Just think and ask God, how can you use me? What do you want me? What role still do you want me to play?
Yeah. So, okay, we need to wrap it up, but we hope you have found this conversation to be helpful. You can see a lot. We put a lot of details in the show notes and some of the resources we talked about. We're going to encourage you, if you know somebody that is interested in this, maybe this is a boy mom who needs the encouragement. Maybe this is a dad that you know who you think would be great as a mentor. Whoever it is, please share today's episode with them and tag us on all your social media channels. Thanks for listening to I Wish You Could Hear This. Remember to subscribe to our podcast. And as always, forward today's audio or video link to a friend, counselor, or pastor who would be encouraged.